You probably already have your own opinion on whether or not everything happens for a reason. But whichever side you're on, that belief shapes your life one way or another. And that's a reason enough to talk about its big advantages, considerable weaknesses, and what's missing from the whole picture. So let's start with weaknesses. Finding patterns, even when they don't exist. Our brains do it all the time. That's why you see a dog in a cloud or your omelette is smiling at you. Human brain doesn't like uncertainty. It doesn't like chaos. Uncertainty brings anxiety, so we tend to look for patterns, even when there's nothing there, just to make it easier for ourselves. It's also one of the reasons why gamblers lose money. They also look for patterns. They're predicting a random future result based on random past results. But patterns allow us to make sense of the world that sometimes doesn't make sense at all. And while it can be helpful on a daily basis, when it's taken to an extreme, we end up with a gambler convinced that it's his time now, for the 5th time in a row. Follow-up belief: people get what they deserve. Once you believe that everything happens for a reason, you are not that far from saying that people get what they deserve. But we all know that's not true. War victims deserved it. All the people in the hospitals deserved it. Sometimes you see an accident on the news and you can think, oh, okay, he was asking for it. Yes, sometimes people do risky things and they pay for it, but sometimes they do absolutely nothing and they still pay for it. The danger here is generalizing. One strong belief leads to another and judges every situation equally, using the same lens that just doesn't apply universally. External locus of control. I remember listening to Dave Ramsey's show. He was taking a call and a woman said that her husband wants to spend every extra penny because he says that God will provide. Whether it's God, universe, anything else, it doesn't really matter. What matters is that when we give away our power for self-determination, it influences aspects of our lives that are otherwise very controllable. If you believe that wealth will show up, okay, but that doesn't mean you should ignore your savings and investments account because you believe you can't really influence the outcomes. But what are the advantages of believing that everything happens for a reason? Meaning making. We perceive reality and assign meaning to it. Two people can have the very same thing happen to them and assign a very different meaning. For example, one person loses their job and spends the next 6 months on the couch, and the other person loses their job and they open their own business. That meaning making is also visible in post-traumatic growth. It doesn't mean that trauma happens for a reason or that it creates growth. But when it happens, it can create an opportunity for someone to turn it into something positive. It's a rather complex process, but what's important in this context is that what was a meaningless suffering can be turned into a driving force for change and growth. Like, if I survived this, I can survive anything. Meaning can be redirected to focusing on finding new opportunities, building new relationships, deepening our beliefs. Acceptance. If everything happens for a reason, then it's easier to accept the difficult experiences. We can fight the reality all we want, but we can't change the past. We can't force people to behave differently. We can't control what randomly happens to us. We can spend all the time we want replaying events, conversations, and we will still be in the same place, just feeling a lot worse. Believing that there was some reason behind it at least allows us to accept it and move forward, or even turn it into one of our strengths. Narrative identity. We constantly tell ourselves stories about who we are, what happened to us, what we want in the future. That's how we make sense of ourselves. I'm here because this happened, and that led me here, and the decision was meaningful because of X. Most of the advantages of telling ourselves in some shape or form that everything happens for a reason, they circle around the meaning making, and it helps us make sense of the world. And it's partly what's missing from the whole picture of everything happens for a reason, that it helps. We tend to associate this belief with religion or spirituality, and because of the general trend of turning away from religion, we also turn away from beliefs like that. But they are not necessarily religious. It's much simpler than that. It's just our minds making sense of the world and helping us navigate it. And whether or not everything happens for a reason, it doesn't really matter. What matters is how it can shape your life.